Up you go. Ooh.
Here we go. It's time to go temple building from the inside out. Many of us know that physical and mental health play a direct part in spiritual health, but we may not know how to bring it all together. Well, here's your host, Desiree Fletcher Carruthers, as we go temple building from the inside out.
Hey everybody, happy Wednesday on this bright and sunshiny December day. Can you believe it? Christmas is less than 12 days away. So if you've been counting down the 12 days of Christmas, I hope you are on the right number for today. I'd just like to say welcome to KPOG 102.9's Temple Building from the Inside Out. I'm your host, Desiree Fletcher Carruthers. Thank you for joining me. As always, please be sure to visit us at kpog.org where you can listen online live or download the KPOG app on your smartphone and carry us with you wherever you go. You can also check us out on the KPOG Facebook page. So if you are not able to listen live but want to catch any back episodes, a lot of our programming, live programming, I should say, is also recorded and available to watch and or listen to later. So you never have to miss a beat with KPOG 102.9. So glad to be here. I know I've been bouncing around everywhere. I was on a Monday, I was on a Sunday, and now I am on a Wednesday. Let's hope that Wednesday sticks. And you know, today is so fitting that it is so sunny outside. I absolutely love it. But we are going to be talking about the sunshine vitamin. I don't know. Can you guess what that is? Can you guess? And if you can't, I'm going to tell you, we are going to be talking about vitamin D. I've gotten a couple of questions on this lately, and it is a great time of year to be talking about vitamin D, and your vitamin D needs. And actually, we need vitamin D all year round, but the winter can pose some special complications might be the word, especially if you live in the Midwest or anywhere there is snow and a lot less sunshine, which is most places in the United States, but not all places. And definitely those who are living in a tropical area, you probably don't need to listen to what I'm going to talk about today because it's primarily going to be about vitamin D and these winter months. Why? Because with the winter months comes an increased risk of vitamin D deficiency. So I realize, I was thinking about this, and I'm going to go off track here for a moment, that there's just not a whole lot that's sexy about what I talk about on my show, but it is very critical. So even though it might not be exciting and or sexy, you need to know. You need to know the information that I am sharing with you. So I hope you pay attention, just play me in the background. It'll sink in a little bit at a time, but this is all stuff that you need to know. So winter and vitamin D. Winter poses a risk of vitamin D deficiency, and the irony is that in the winter is when most people need vitamin D the most because we're already not getting enough, and then we have less exposure to the sun. So why do we need it? What's the hubbub about vitamin D? Well, we need vitamin D, because it helps boost our immune system, and it impacts a lot of functions internally in our bodies, and can help us fight, infections, viruses, fatigue, depression, and a whole host of other ailments. So vitamin D is critical. So now that we've established that it's important, there are a lot of follow-up questions that come along with talking about any supplement. How much should we take? How can we get it? Do we need to take supplements? How do we get more? And who needs it? So those are all things we are going to take a look at and try to tackle in our short time together today. And in case you're not familiar, I'm going to share with you what vitamin D is actually. And thanks for chiming in, Elaine. You are right, especially during and after menopause, which is an area that I wasn't planning to cover. But vitamin D is also important for females going through that process in life change. It's just something that you need all throughout your life. But there are points in time of life where you might need more, and your body actually has the least amounts where you want to be paying attention and know when those times are. So vitamin D, what is it? Well, it's a fat-soluble vitamin. And what does that mean? What does it mean that it's fat-soluble? Well, that means that it can dissolve in fats and oils. And so fat-soluble vitamins are absorbed along with fats in your diet and are stored in the body's fatty tissue and in the liver, whereas if you have a water-soluble vitamin, that means it's going to break down the fastest in a liquid, in water, and your body is not going to store it. It's not going to build up stores, and you're going to have to either, if you're supplementing, take that vitamin every day, or be eating those vitamin-rich foods every single day, because your body is just using what it has for the day, and then the next day you have to replace it. Whereas fat-soluble vitamins, they're going to hang around in your system a little bit longer. And so they're found in many plant and animal foods and in dietary supplements. And some of the most prominent fat-soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K. So FYI for anyone who was interested there. So vitamin D among the 4 fat solubles. And just for the sake of argument, I want to point out that there are 2 different types of vitamin D. So you have vitamin D2 and vitamin D3. So these are the 2 main forms, and both are essential to the body. Your body will convert them in basically the same way into the form that the body needs to in order to be able to use it. The main differences are that vitamin D3 is the type we make in sunlight, and is also found in a limited number of animal foods, such as oily fish. Cod liver oil might be one that comes to mind for you. And then vitamin D2 comes from plants and fungi, including mushrooms, is one of the most popular ones under UV light. I will say, if you're wondering, well, do I need vitamin D2? Do I need vitamin D3? If the body uses them most of the same, does it really matter? Well, there are a couple of considerations for you guys to think about. So recent studies are showing that vitamin D3 implements are significantly more effective in the body than D2 as far as raising vitamin D levels. So if you're looking at a supplement label, if that's where you're getting most of your vitamin D, you'll want to take a look and see, does it promote D3 or does it promote D2? Since D3 can include animal products, for instance, like lanolin is used in the process of creating D3 supplements. If you're a vegan or if you have a wool sensitivity, that might not be the version for you. Then maybe D2 is the route that you need to go. Although the scuttle on the street is that there is at least one company, and probably more, that is working on creating a vegan version of D3, bypassing the lanolin. And I'm not really sure how that whole process works or how they capture the D vitamin from plants to begin with, and or the lanolin, but I understand, my limited understanding of this is that they follow a lot of the procedures that pharmaceuticals use to put the different compounds into other prescriptions. So similar processes are also used for supplements. So I guess FYI, food for thought, but definitely you need it, whether it's D2 or D3, check it out and take a look at it. So we've talked a little bit about supplementation. You can get vitamin D from supplements, D2 and D3, but it's not called the sunshine vitamin for nothing, because vitamin D is made in the skin after exposure to the sun. It's the same UVB rays that causes sunburn. They also make vitamin D. So sunscreen, darker skin pigmentation, long sleeves, long pants clothing, and reduced daylight in winter impact our ability to get those UVB rays into our body so our body can naturally produce the vitamin D. So people who experience the biggest seasonal swings in vitamin D levels are those that are fair-skinned, usually living in the northern regions of the U.S. and at higher latitudes around the globe, where there is very little daylight, because if you are fairer skinned, then of course your body is going to convert more of that sunlight to vitamin D, and or has the greatest ability to, because we just shared that if you have darker pigmentation, so whatever race that may be, if it's Latino, even Mediterranean, African Americans, primarily, the more melanin you have, the more it's going to block those UVB rays and the less vitamin D that your body is going to produce. So, those with the biggest swings as far as vitamin D conversion are going to be those who naturally are able to convert the greatest amounts of the UVB rays into vitamin D to begin with. So those most at risk to low vitamin D levels, although across the board, most people are deficient. I'm just going to make that statement right there. Most people are deficient in vitamin D, but those most at risk for low vitamin D levels, again, are people of color or people living in higher latitudes. So dark-skinned individuals, because of their darker skin, it blocks the UVB rays better than fairer skin, and they have a harder time of producing or converting the sun's rays into vitamin D. And so that just goes to show also that when you couple an inability to, not a total inability, but a harder time of converting UVB rays into vitamin D, and then you get less of it, especially in winter months because we're covered up, we're not outdoors, that it just stands to reason that dark-skinned individuals' vitamin D is lowest in the winter. So if you have heard that stat before, that African Americans, as far as race goes, generally have the lowest vitamin D numbers and as a race are most deficient, this would be why, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind, why winter is so tough for vitamin D and we need it. And so why do we need it? So we talked a little bit about that it can help you stave off, viruses, infections, because of its work in helping to boost your immune system. But it also does a lot of work to build up your bones, and also is very powerful in the gut. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And I actually want to share some news that I found to be very interesting from a medical microbiologist. Her name is Margarita Cantorna, and she's at Penn State. And I want to share with you what I found about her work that she's doing with vitamin D. But before we get there, another question that's popped up. So when you get a tan in the summer months, is this like a double-edged sword? Yes and no. It's a double-edged sword because we shouldn't be exposing ourselves excessively to sun's rays, whether it's, natural sun or in a tanning bed, just because of melanoma concerns. Will a tan slow down the absorption of vitamin D? And, I really have to look into that more, but off the cuff of what my understanding is that it will not, because the amount of melanin you have in your skin has not changed. It's just reflecting extended exposure to the sun. So if you already are darker, then the tan is not going to change the melanin levels in your skin. It's just expressing the exposure to the sun, if that makes sense. So it's not a double-edged sword from that perspective that your skin is looking darker, because when you have when you don't have the same amount of exposure to the sun, then of course your skin returns back to normal. So it's a reaction. But it is a double-edged sword that you don't want to be out in the sun too much. You don't want to have overexposure. So that's how I would think about that. Hopefully that was helpful. All right, so Dr. Cantorna, she's at Penn State. She studies the function of vitamin D in immune cells. So I'm always going on about the immune system, folks, and your food and digestion and all of that stuff. So this kind of thing is, I'm going to say exciting. It's exciting to me. It's interesting to me. So if you are ready to geek out with me, here we go. So her laboratory has been interested in figuring out why the immune system has vitamin D receptors that determine which cells use vitamin D. So not all cells in your body are going to use vitamin D. So in the immune system, vitamin D acts to improve your ability to fight infections and to reduce inflammation. So two very good reasons why you need it again. Originally, doctors thought that vitamin D was only important for bone health. This was because the vitamin D deficiency caused bone diseases like rickets in children and osteoporosis in adults. So very important to bone health. However, in the 1980s, scientists discovered that immune cells had receptors for vitamin D. So Dr. Cantorna's research has shown that vitamin D plays an important role in maintaining the health in your gastrointestinal tract, so your GI system, your digestive system, what we've talked about many times. Higher levels of vitamin D reduce susceptibility to inflammatory bowel disease and Crohn's disease, gut and lung infections in animals and people. And we've also talked about many times how inflammation is at the root of many diseases. And the more you can lessen and or control the amount of inflammation in your body, the healthier you generally are. So very exciting there. The doctor and her colleagues have discovered that one of the ways vitamin D functions is by keeping the microbes in the gut healthy and happy, which is very important because if the gut is your second brain, we need to keep it healthy because it impacts so many other functions in your body, including emotional health. So a happy gut makes a happy person. Vitamin D increases the number and diversity of microbes, or that good flora and fauna that we want in there, which reduce inflammation throughout the body. Man, that makes me want to go out and stand in the sun and or pop a cod liver fish vitamin D capsule. Love it, love it. All right, here we go. Here's the flip side. Low vitamin D levels are associated with, we said, inflammatory bowel diseases in humans, among other things. Researchers have found that inflammatory bowel disease patients in Japan have more symptoms in winter than other seasons, okay, which stands to reason. It's just supportive data. And then she goes on to say, people with darker skin are most likely to have low vitamin D levels year round, but in the winter, it gets zapped even more, because we just have less exposure. In the winter, humans are exposed to more infections and spend less time outside. So here's where we're tying in the winter considerations. Exactly how much vitamin D do healthy adults do they need? That's debated. Some authorities recommend from 200 IUs, which stands for international units, I believe, per day, to 2,000. I've heard even higher, upwards up to 4,000 and 5,000. I think it just all depends on the body. So it's important to be talking to your doctor about vitamin D usage before you go out and just start pumping it in, because even though vitamin D is very critical, too much of it can bring about toxicity in the body. And that's usually from supplementation, not overexposure to the sun. Being in the sun too much can give you a very bad sunburn, can be a trigger to skin cancer potentially, but generally not a cause for toxicity. If you take too much vitamin D through supplements, that's where you can run into trouble, into toxicity and the health concerns that go along with that. Okay, so where do you get it? Okay, we talk supplementation, but what other foods can you get vitamin D from? So we talked about oily fish, such as cod, salmon, mackerel. Mushrooms, if you happen to like mushrooms, are a good food. And here's a tip. You get your mushrooms from the grocery store. If you put them out in the sun for about 20 minutes prior to cooking, give or take, that can also help to release the vitamin D levels in those foods. So if you want to maximize the vitamin D that's available in a mushroom, put it out in the sun for a little bit before you cook it. Just a little food for that. Food for thought there. Beef liver, yeah, I don't like it. If you do, good for you. I don't like it. I've never liked it. You can verify that with my mother. She used to try to trick me when I was little and tell me it was steak, but after that first bite, you knew it was liver and nothing else. Egg yolks are also good. You can also get vitamin D in some fortified food products as well, generally processed. Up to you if you want to go that route. Orange juice is one of those. Sometimes milk, other processed foods will have fortified vitamin D in them. So read the labels, check it out, see what you are getting. Now, question, how much do we need in a person's daily requirement? It's impacted by a lot of factors. It could be your age. Are you pregnant? Do you have any other underlying medical conditions? But in general, the National Institutes of Health recommend that ages 0 to 12 months, 400 IUs. So IU is international units, which is a measure of the potency or biological activity of a product, or 10 micrograms. So micrograms, whether you see a G or an MCG, this is actually the physical amount. If you were to measure something out, the microgram is what you would use to measure that. So 0 to 12 months, 400 IUs or 10 micrograms, according to the National Institutes of Health. 1 to 17 years. Now this is daily, all right? This is daily dosage, in case you were wondering. Ages 1 to 17 years, 600 IUs or 15 micrograms. 18 to 70 years, still 600. And 70 years and over, 800 IUs or 20 micrograms. And again, this is all based on, can be age, can be gender, can be race. Are you pregnant? Do you have any underlying medical conditions? Clearly, if you're an African American and your vitamin D levels are low year round, then you're going to need more than the recommended daily dose, right? So talk to your doctor, figure that out. They do say that most people meet at least some of their vitamin D requirements by having safe exposure to sunlight. So according to the National Institutes of Health, spending 5 to 30 minutes in the sun with the face, arms, legs, or back exposed at least twice per week is enough. So hours at a time, can get you that golden glow that so many are after, but you really don't need that much for your vitamin D. Let's see. Vitamin D supplements. We're shifting gears here a little bit. They are available in different forms. So we have talked about supplements in the past. So chewables, liquids, and sprays, or the capsules, whichever, works best for you. That's what you want to take. All right. So eating the right foods, being out in the sun, and you can even get vitamin D by sitting near windows or sitting outside in the shade. You are going to, actually you're not, I should say, you are not going to be able to get vitamin D by sitting near windows or outside in the shade. You have to have direct exposure. But if you're partial, like if part of you is in the shade, but your legs or your arms are hanging out in the sun, you're going to get it from there. Windows, most often the modern windows filter out any UVB rays, so that's why those are not going to work for you there. So in summary, having a small amount of safe sunlight several times per week can help you get the vitamin D, or at least the minimal recommendations you need. You can take supplements, definitely load up or include the right foods that you need that carry vitamin D in them. And this is something that you are going to want to take advantage of all year round. So if you're not sure how you would know if you're deficient, sometimes there are the telltale signs where you might have muscle weakness or fatigue, or you're sick quite often. Maybe wounds don't heal quickly, which could also be indicators of other things in your body, not just vitamin D deficiency, but that could be one of them. Or maybe you're feeling depressed. Maybe you have SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder, which a lot of people experience in the winter, and it has a lot to do with they don't have as much exposure to the sun. And this is why. They don't have those vitamin D levels in the gut, which we also know are instrumental to creating and encouraging serotonin production and use in the body, which is your happy hormone. So all these things work together. So if you are experiencing some of those things and you're really wondering, what is this? Why am I feeling this way? Why do I have these aches and pains? Nothing else seems to be wrong with me. You can get a test from your doctor to determine what your vitamin D levels are. Now, I will say that this is most likely going to be a test that you're going to have to request. And even if you request it, your doctor may not be willing right away to give it to you. And I'm just speaking from personal experience for myself and from personal experience of others. Maybe you've experienced something different. A lot of times is because insurance companies will not cover just a random vitamin D test. So if you're going in and you are experiencing XYZ symptoms and they haven't suggested a test, but you want a test, then be sure to push for it, because this is information that you need to know and be prepared to pay for it. There are other tests where you can get your vitamin D test outside of the blood test that you might get at your doctor's office. I know there are some more holistic options out there where they measure vitamin levels of all sorts in your system, and sometimes you can find those through your chiropractor, holistic providers, and they can test your supplement, your vitamin levels as well. So just food for thought and things to think about, but you definitely want to be paying attention to your vitamin D levels this winter season. I would say, especially just with the current environment that we have with, being winter anyway, and we tend to be sick more often, and you have COVID, just so many stressors going on in the world today that, you're going to need a little extra oomph to get through these and make sure your health is optimal. So your vitamin D is going to be very, very, very important. Like I said, it's not sexy, but it's critical. It's information that you need to know. And thank you, Kaylin. I'm glad that you like to be out in the sun. And yes, people of color, we always think that it's, we don't always think, but I'm going to talk in generalities here that, most people would not think that people of color, would want a quote unquote tan or could benefit from being out in the sun, but they can. A, vitamin D, but B, most individuals, in the winter, because they're not exposed, their skin becomes lighter, in slang terms, maybe even pasty. And that happens to individuals of color as well. So in the summer, your color springs back more and it's a little brighter, a little softer, a little shinier. And that goes for people across the board, whatever your nationality is. So it's good for all individuals to get a little bit of sun, vitamin D being one, but B, it just makes us feel better. So you've got the happy hormones going. And, when you feel good and you feel like you look good, then you just feel overall better. For those who are following the Facebook live feed, Ivy Potter is a tan expert. We call her the Sunless Ninja, those of us in the natural bodybuilding circles, because she does a lot of spray tanning. She's with the Norvell company, and so smart, and just knows so much about better products to be putting on skin in different circumstances. And, long story short, if you are a natural bodybuilding competitor, then spray tanning is very important to your appearance, because the darker you are, the better the muscles that you've been working on building and developing are going to show, so that they can be better judged by the judges. Because a muscle that the judges can't really see the definition of, they can't judge it in the same way they would judge an individual who you can clearly see the muscle definition, size, and striation. So there's your little education on natural bodybuilding and tanning. And Ivy Potter is one of the industry bests. So that might be an interesting show. I don't know necessarily about this show, but for those who like to use spray tanning for recreational purposes versus competitive purposes, there's a lot out there that you need to know. Your skin is the largest living organ on your body, and what you put on it is important because it gets absorbed into your body. So that's my little plug that I'm going to put there. And beyond that, folks, I hope you are having a blessed holiday season, that your Thanksgiving was wonderful, and that your Christmas holiday and even your New Year's coming up are going to be blessed as well. I will say, don't wait until January 1st to make strides to have better health. Today is the day. Today is the day to start exercising, to start eating better, to start getting more vitamin D. Today is that day. And it can be small steps. It doesn't have to be huge steps. It can just be one thing. It could be one more glass of water every day. Whatever it is that's going to get you started, don't put it off. Don't put it off, and don't feel like you are going to be missing out on something if you start to focus on your health today, because it's going to require you to stop doing something, stop eating something, stop drinking something. Don't look at it that way. You have to think about what you're gaining in better health versus what you're giving up, because it's your innate health, your inner health, that is going to carry you through whatever is out there. We do have medical services out there that are going to help you, no doubt. But whatever the medical community is going to do, it's only going to be enhanced if you've already individually been working on your health individually, your immune system, all of it, exercise, your mindset, detoxing your body, working on what you expose yourself to, whether it's emotionally or chemically. The more you can do for yourself, the more anyone else is going to be able to do for you as well. So that is your food for thought for today. And until next week, your body is a temple. So let's build it.